Welcome on into the Fantasy Football Forge. My name is Steve, and it is NFL Combine Week. So to honor that, we're going to do 3 quicker, hopefully, mock drafts going into the week. The plan is to release these like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday in a row. The connecting thread of these mock drafts was supposed to be like a crazy trade or two, just kind of trying to take a shot at something that, hey, it's probably not going to happen, but could it make some sense? And if it were to happen, how neat would that be that I got it right? That kind of deal. So I've already prepared 2 mock drafts. Each of them is going to have, all 3 of them will have different themes. The second one, I kind of forgot about that, so it's pretty timid on the trades. I'll try to get back to doing a couple of big trade, ideas for the following one. But with that out of the way, I think let's just get right down to this mock draft. And the theme is team needs. So I have recently done my team needs. I am going to give you my tier 1 of team needs. This is obviously prior to free agency. And free agency, like last year, pretty much all of my primary team needs, all of my team needs basically got reshuffled around. Like, teams go into the draft with pretty complete teams. You'd be surprised. So, let's do this. And I would like your feedback, though, for your team's needs. If you think I have something wrong, I'm missing something, whatever, let me know and try to explain it a little bit so I can determine if I agree or not. As far as the first pick of the draft, Tennessee goes, they moved on from Will Levis twice last year. They're clearly over him, right? So, it would make a lot of sense for them to go Cam Ward, quarterback, first pick of the draft. Makes a lot of sense for Tennessee. And for Cleveland, they need a quarterback as well, and Shedeur Sanders is worth a shot. You don't get to pick one of the top quarterbacks in the draft very often. You might as well give it a shot. He fits the system well. You don't have to pay extra resources to get up here to do it. And look, you can say, oh, but there's such a low chance that he's going to pay off. There's not a guarantee that if you take anybody else in this draft, Abdul Carter or anybody else, there's no guarantee that they pay off either. So you're not going to get anywhere without a quarterback in the modern NFL. You need something. You can get a little bit lucky with the quarterbacks, of course, but in general, take the shots. There's very little reason why not to. So that's what we're going to do for Cleveland here. New York Giants are on the board, and once again, they're sitting there like, crap, this was not how we planned this out. And I think that could work out fine for them this year. In this year, I think combining one of the names from out there in free agency along with one of these late round 1, if that happens to be the case, day 2 types of quarterbacks could be a very good constellation, and it could pay off in the long run. So with that in mind, the Giants are really looking to kick back all the way into the 20s because they do have their eyes on a quarterback. Just they don't want to take him up here at 3 or even at 10 or anything like that. So they're on the phones, working the phones, and like I said, they're calling back into the 20s to see if anyone would make the jump up for essentially the best player, at least on their board, in the draft, because pretty much nobody has Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders as the number 1 best player of the draft here. So maybe there will be someone looking to come up and, or, let's say one of the best 2 players between Travis Hunter and Abdul Carter. And they are going to find a team here in the Los Angeles Chargers. Like I said, we're going to take a couple of fun trades. This is fun trade number 1 here of this draft. And the Chargers, this is what it might cost here to come up to 3/22.54, a future first. That sets up New York with, if their quarterback plan still continues to crumble and not work a little bit later in this draft, or going into next year, whatever, it'll set them up nicely for the future. So that works out for New York as well. And the Chargers will come in with needs at center, nose tackle, defensive end, along the whole front of their defensive line, defensive tackle, and cornerback. And they have good capital, as you could see there. So this is what could be viewed as really their only chance to get a real centerpiece for their defense to be built around. Plus, they're an offense that does not rely heavily on 11 personnel, and I bring that up because we're going to take Travis Hunter here, fill in that need at cornerback. Notice edge rusher wasn't up there, so for purpose of this draft, I didn't have edge rusher in mind for them when they traded up. It was going to be Travis Hunter always, and Travis Hunter popping in and out of this offense could work since they don't have a heavy reliance on 11 personnel. At pick 4, we have New England, who still has a lot of holes to fix, even with whatever they do in free agency. And they're going to capitalize on the fact that one of the 2 best players in the draft are going to be falling to them at pick 4 by trading back for more capital. And they're going to find a trade partner here. Let's see if they come up. Now, in San Francisco, so obviously coming up for Abdul Carter, San Francisco is going to take picks 11, 43, 75, get back 4, and 69. So they're going to move 4 back to, New England's going to move 4 back to 11 and 69 back to 75 in order to get pick 43. So I've got an obnoxious cat who thinks it's dinner time and it's not for about another 2 to 3 hours. And so that's fun. She's going to be annoying while I'm trying to film. But there's your trade. And when you think of how San Francisco is built team-wise, San Francisco likes to get a bunch of just really good, solid players all around on their roster, and then they sprinkle in several big pieces or, extra highly talented players. Sometimes they draft them, oftentimes they trade for them. And when I talk about San Francisco, also think of how the Rams operate. Very similar team building ideologies between the 2 franchises. And here they're going to end up trading up to draft 1, as they're very rarely anywhere near striking distance of getting a top 5 player, a team who's perennially picking towards the back end of the draft. So being close here, being within striking distance, it's not going to cost them an overwhelming amount of capital. And once again, they're a team who does like to put their capital towards some of these big pieces, and otherwise they just kind of draft these smart players that they can trust to do their jobs. And then, the big pieces then do more than their jobs around them. So I think that would be that big splash addition there for San Francisco as an edge rusher. That is one of their needs. By the way, their needs, I have offensive guard, edge rusher, will linebacker, cornerback, and defensive tackle for San Francisco. Bring us on to Jacksonville, who have needs at safety. They don't really have a safety, guard, and cornerback as well. However, I do have a unique second-tier situation going on for Jacksonville. And I do this every now and then for teams, and basically what it is that they only need a really good defensive tackle. If they don't get, one of these high-end defensive tackles, then they're fine at the position. They can get by without fixing it as long as they're, doing stuff at other positions. It'd be okay. But in this situation at this pick, you are going to be gifted with most likely Mason Graham being available here, and I think that would be really wise of them to take. That really makes that front 7 start to become a strength of theirs to continue to build around. And then that brings us on to pick 6. Las Vegas have need at quarterback. Quarterbacks are already gone. Wide receiver, running back, nickelback, guard/center, because they have probably their center was playing guard last year, but obviously he could stay at guard if they were to draft a center. And then safety and middle linebacker. And so, wide receivers up there on that list. We're going to take Tetaroa McMillan for them. I'm not going to overrule consensus on this one, which reminds me, the other part of what I'm doing with this draft here is I'm drafting based on need, but from what list? I'm taking from consensus is heavily weighing the decision of what the next best player it is that fits one of their needs. And when things don't quite line up, or at times here, I will overrule consensus for one reason or another, and I will explain that. But otherwise, just consensus, it's a NFL mock draft database.com, I believe, is the website. I think is the best consensus board that you can find. It's really the only one I'm truly aware of. So that's what we're using to make these decisions. On to pick 7, New York Jets, quarterback, safety, nickelback, cornerback, edge, tackle, tight end. That's my tier 1 of needs for them. And Will Campbell is going to be the pick for them here. We are considering him a tackle for purposes of this, obviously. This brings us on to Carolina. And I say that maybe you're not aware. A lot of people do talk about Will Campbell potentially being a guard or anything like that. But purposes of this, definitely just going to be a tackle there. Carolina, safety and cornerback in the top tier. And so this is where I could have maybe traded out, could have gone to tier 2 for the needs. But trying to stick to this first tier and make it work if it makes sense, safety, cornerback, doesn't fully make sense here, except for the fact that Jahdae Barron is a really great fit for the blitz-heavy, zone-heavy scheme that they'll be running in Carolina. And I've seen Jahdae Barron higher on enough boards now that I made the executive decision to include him this high up, despite a lower status on the consensus board. Consensus, still quite a bit lower. He's been rising. His consensus will rise. I'm sure it will be into the teens, probably, it looks like, by the time that we get to draft day. But in the meantime, breaking the rules here a little bit for Jahdae Barron. And not everybody's in agreement, but it seems like a lot more people are getting on board. That's going to bring us on to the New Orleans Saints pick 9. Guard, edge rusher, right tackle, cornerback, nickelback needs for New Orleans. And Michael Williams is has a relatively good chance of going in the top 10. The Saints will be making that true here. So Michael a little bit lower on this board. Brings us on to Chicago at pick 10. And my top tier for them is just center and guard. And Calvin Banks is still available. If he's better at tackle, then he can go out, kick out. Braxton Jones can kick on in. Otherwise, Calvin Banks could be a guard here too. But we'll get our best 5 out there. Strong believer in that. And there you go. That brings us on to New England, who had traded back. Team needs tackle, cornerback, center, guard, wide receiver. All of the offensive line is a need here, given the board and the format that we're working on. However, we're going to have to wait on, I'm sure we've done something in free agency to help that line, but we're going to have to wait because we're going to be taking Will Johnson. This is kind of, in a sense, this is like a best player available meets team needs kind of mock draft, which is, I think, normally what teams do anyways. So I do really like this in that sense, kind of forcing you sometimes to maybe not take the obvious need because, well, best player available still might overrule that by a little ways. So New England should quickly have one of the better starting quarterback duos in the league. That's one thing that you got to think about here. I mean, you add Will Johnson into that secondary, and I mean, now we're really starting to build something there, a strength to hang your hat on. I really think that would be a nice pairing of cornerbacks there. That's going to bring us on to Dallas, pick 12. We got running back, defensive tackle, wide receivers, nose tackle, nickelback, guard, all needs. But you know who it's going to be, obviously, here. Ashton Jeanty, pick 12 to Dallas. That's how we do it. And at pick 13, we're going to go with Malachi Starks here. It makes sense if you like Malachi this much. It's the number one need for Miami for me is safety, followed by guard, nose tackle, defensive end, inside linebacker. I think we're going to see Malachi continue to maybe fall down boards a little bit, but people have varying. He's another guy people have varying opinions on, and this draft this season more than any, I think we're going to know less than we've known even in other drafts of what's going to happen because there's pretty big swaths or groups of players that people just have different opinions on, and depending on what the team's opinion is and if that player is available, they'll get drafted or not earlier on in these drafts. So Malachi Stark's one of those guys who could go anywhere from, some people think he's a top 10 player all the way to maybe he's falling out of being into the first round because he is coming off of a down year where we really didn't have a first round kind of year in 2024. That's going to bring us on to the Indianapolis Colts. Guard, tight end, free safety, will linebacker. I think you know what this one is too. It's going to be Tyler Warren. It adds up with the consensus board. You've seen this before. It lines up nicely. And to me, you take Tyler Warren because this is Anthony Richardson's final test, and just kind of like what Tennessee did last year with Will Levis, it's like, we need to find out. We need to find out quickly. Let's just give this dude whatever weapons we still don't have for him to find out if he is the answer or we're moving on. And so that's kind of what this Tyler Warren edition is for Anthony Richardson. It's make it work, man, or you're gone. And that's going to bring us on to the Indianapolis, the Atlanta Falcons at pick 15 before we get there. If you made it this far in the video, think about dropping that like. It really, really does help. I appreciate it. Also, of course, subscribing for more. Cool. You know about that. Also, in the description, you can find links to the website where you can find my big mock drafts, 1.0, 2.0, 3.0. Going to go up to, I think, a 4.0 probably this year. That's the goal. But the 1.0 is already up there and available if you haven't seen the video for that. If you just want to go and review that at any point in time, you can. And you can also find my scouting notes on the Discord server. Eventually, I'll have my position rankings on there. But for now, you can find my strengths, weaknesses, just general notes that I have on every player that I've scouted. Lots of them, hundreds of them. And it's all out there, and it will be continuously updated as well. So that's on the Discord server. Should be free for you to get on. Should not be password protected. If is password protected, let me know. But yeah, links in the description of this video for that. And with that, let's continue on to pick 15 for Atlanta. Got nose tackle, center, edge, free safety, nickelback as the options here. And we're going to have Jalen Walker staying at home, staying in Georgia there with Atlanta. Going to bring us on to pick 16 with Arizona. My needs for them are nose tackle, edge, and guard. And based on their drafting of Darius Robinson last year, I think Shamar Stewart seems like their type. So I just went a little ways down the consensus board from pick 15 to 18 to take Shamar Stewart. I think James Pierce is probably 15, Shamar Stewart 18 now on the consensus board. So it just seemed like the better match, especially with recent rumors going abound around James Pierce. Anyways, brings us on to pick 17, where it is going to be James Pierce here. I said I'm going to cheat a little. Oh, yeah, so my needs right now, my top tier of needs for Cincinnati are guard and nickelback position, but I do believe that at the end of the day, my top tier will have edge rusher as well, so just a little bit of a cheat there. Got him James Pierce here at 17. At 18, Seattle, we got guard, cornerback, edge, defensive tackle, will linebacker. Yeah, I said that correctly. And Mike Green is right there as a need and on the consensus board as well. So is Armand Membu, and so is Walter Nolan. I narrowed things down to Armand Membu. This was one of those things where I'm weighing the heaviness of the need in the order of this list, and they're all right next to each other on the consensus board. But after looking at it around, I came to Armand Membu being the guy out of those three. But I could not get the John Schneider quote. Here it is. Guys get overdrafted at guard position, and in my opinion, they get overpaid. John Schneider is the GM of the Seahawks. If you did not know that, he makes the draft decisions there, that means. And that just does not sound like the quote from a man who's going to be taking a guard and backup tackle for when Abe Lucas goes down, probably in the first round. So we end up going back to the drawing board and grabbing Mike Green here. That's 4 edge rushers in a row, if you didn't notice that. Jalen Walker, Shamar, James Pierce, Mike Green, all expected to be edge rushers at the next level. Bringing us on to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who have needs at linebacker, guard / center, another one of those situations where they have a flexible guy, edge, wide receiver, slot, and defensive end. And they're going to get Armand Membu, I believe, in my 1.0. Maybe I did Armand Membu to them as well. Whatever the case, I really like the fit with that. Tampa's going to have one of the best and most versatile offensive lines in the league in absolutely no time. That's a really nice addition to them. Going to play playing guard for them, by the way. And then, what's his face? Their Graham Barton, draft pick from last year. We'll move on into center. Going to bring us on to Denver, who have needs at linebacker, tight end, and nose tackle. And we've got a nose tackle just waiting right in the wings here. Kenneth Grant going to Denver. And I think I do this again in tomorrow's draft, maybe, and I didn't realize that. No, maybe not. So I don't remember. But Zach Allen, Kenneth Grant, John Franklin Myers, Nick Bonito, Jonah Ellis, and Jonathan Cooper. A pretty nasty group for offensive lines to have to deal with. Let's bring us on to Pittsburgh here at pick 21. And I do have quarterback as a need all on its own for them. They don't have one currently on the roster, but I don't think that they would be having too much interest in Jackson Dart. And he's really the one who I think, like, if we see another one go into the first round, is probably going to be him. So this is a case where we're going to go on to that second tier, looking at cornerback, nickelback, defensive end, and Walter Nolan fits the bill, and I would consider this a steal for Pittsburgh at this point. Walter Nolan, a guy who, I mean, I think I have ranked right around a top 10 kind of guy. Then to bring the New York Giants onto the board. Yeah, remember they traded back earlier, and they still have a quarterback need, and that man for them is going to be Jackson Dart. I've talked about this, I think, in other mock drafts, so Jackson Dart, come on down. No need to rehash that, but I do think that could be a fit that they would be very interested in there in New York as at least a backup plan if things don't go well for them at the top of the draft like they didn't in this one. Green Bay Packers pick 23. They have needs at center, cornerback, and a Sam linebacker. And I think that Jihad Campbell could fill that role. We've seen the Green Bay Packers invest with high amounts of capital in that linebacker room in the past, so this would not be some sort of shock for them to do. After that, we've got Minnesota coming up, and they have a high need at cornerback. Also, running back, guard, defensive tackle, defensive end, safety, all need. So, defensive line in general there with some needs. And I can't believe they need help at safety again. They just drafted a bunch. Like, didn't they have too many safeties just a year ago at the start of last year? Anyways, they needed that help at guard. Tyler Booker coming up next on the consensus board. It's not an exciting pick, but you do want to protect J.J. McCarthy, right? Especially as he comes back from injury. Make sure he doesn't have to push too hard on that one. It's a good pick at the end. Offensive line's never a bad pick. That's going to bring us on to the Houston Texans. They got a need at the wide receiver. Specifically, I think a slot wide receiver is what they would prefer the most. Doesn't have to be, but probably should be. And then defensive tackle. Those are the only two spots I have in their top tier. And that's going to be Emeka Egbuka coming up. I am overriding the current higher draft pick on consensus boards is Luther Burden to draft Emeka Egbuka. He's Stroud's old buddy from Ohio State. They're familiar with each other. I think it could make sense that regardless of Luther Burden being there or not, I don't think there's a big enough difference where you want to get your quarterback somebody who they want to bring in. Okay, we'll bring you Emeka Egbuka then. That's going to bring the Los Angeles Rams up onto the board, and they need cornerback help, offensive tackle, and interior linebacker help as well. And Josh Simmons is available here. Fits. He could go much higher depending on how the medicals go for him, is what I wrote. Going to bring us on to Baltimore, left tackle, defensive end, wide receiver, slot specifically I wrote here. And that's going to work. Luther Burden. Look, there's nothing wrong with going all in on this offense, making sure that you can just steamroll people. I wouldn't be opposed to Luther Burden here. It's not like, I think there's other better ways to maybe build this roster, build the team. Regardless, I would like to see Lamar Jackson have like a full asset of weaponry around him. That'd be pretty neat. Bring us on to the Detroit Lions here at pick 28. Cornerback, edge, wide receiver I have as their primary needs, and that's going to make it Trey Amos here for Detroit. I overruled a Nick Scorton pick here for purposes of draft strategy. There should be a worthy edge rusher still around near the end of the second round. Washington up on the clock here at pick 29. Wide receivers, guards, edge, safety, all needs. And it's between Matthew Golden or Nick Scorton for me here, and I'm going to go with Matthew Golden for Washington. An offensive draft pick is an investment in Jaden Daniels, and that's tough to argue against going ahead and doing that. Buffalo at pick 30. You got wide receiver specifically. I have listed an X wide receiver, I think is what they're going to be looking for to add there. Definitely not a slot wide receiver. And cornerback. And looking at the cornerback landscape, I'd be comfortable falling back a few spots. I wrote if I was Buffalo with one last starting quality left tackle available. The phone does ring, and Buffalo is going to listen in to a trade offer from the New England Patriots, who of course got a little extra capital to work with here. So New England's going to give them pick 1 of 4 to move up from pick 38 to 30 here. And Buffalo is going to agree with that because they're going to end up getting Benjamin Morrison or Azariah Thomas, most likely would be the expectation, and I just, we'll just write that in as that's what's going to end up happening for you Buffalo fans. Don't want you coming here and not getting a draft pick out of that. So just write in one of those names, depending on how the medicals go for Benjamin Morrison. And New England is on the board here with plenty of capital. They're going to take Josh Connerly. I got here. I had to read through my writing there. But yeah, Josh Connerly to New England. And so you like that. You got New England, getting Will Johnson up here, but then addressing that offensive line with a really solid pick there in Josh Connerly. Brings us to Kansas City, who got jumped for Josh Connerly there. And Kansas City's going to take Tyleik Williams. Luckily, there was an item on the menu, or I'd have to go to my second tier draft. Oh, yeah, so Kansas City needs a nose tackle, by the way. And so Tyleik Williams can be played at nose tackle. He's versatile. You can do a lot of things with him, but especially if that's your plan with him, you can add a couple more pounds, but he's pretty much ready to go. He can play over the center as a nose tackle. Should be fine. Brings us on to Philadelphia, who has a need at guard, and I wrote, shit, I thought I'd be able to give them Colston Loveland here, but free agency could change this, but it hasn't happened yet, so we're going to give him Donovan Jackson. Donovan Jackson, somebody who oftentimes be mocked in the first round by people who know things, and he is a little bit higher than Gray Zabel on the consensus big board. Gray Zabel, who's I have him higher on my board, I would have given to them. So I will put up a complete results up onto the screen here. You can pause that, look at it. That's going to be the end of this video. Look forward to another one tomorrow and then on Thursday. Peace out.